Welcome back to Light the Fuse. And Charles, this is the episode. I feel like you and I have been waiting for this episode maybe since the podcast began.
Yes.
You think that's fair?
I think that is fair to say, Drew, although I also think it would be fair to say that I never thought in a million years when we started this podcast that we would be talking to Brian De Palma.
I didn't think we would talk to anybody outside of the two people in this Zoom call. So, I think the whole thing has been quite a enjoyable surprise. But this is big.
Yeah, this is a whole nother level that's just, crazy that this happened. And if you're just stopping by, this is the only episode you've heard, you should definitely check out our previous interviews that we've done. We've talked to so many amazing people. We've had Christopher McQuarrie on the show multiple times. We've had editor Eddie Hamilton, who edited both Rogue Nation and Fallout and the upcoming Top Gun Maverick. We've had Robert Elswit, who's cinematographer of both Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation and also shot many Paul Thomas Anderson movies. We've got a crazy, awesome episode about Oliver Stone's Mission Impossible 2 that never got made, but we got the screenplay and broke it down and talked about everything that was going to be in that movie that got canceled late in the process. We've had Brad Bird, one of our best interviews. I mean, it's basically like Brad Bird's commentary for Ghost Protocol. He never did a commentary. He went on our show and talked about it.
That is, yeah.
I mean, that's one of my favorites. Paul Hirsch, of course, legendary editor of the first Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Ferris Bueller, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, so many Brian De Palma movies. We've had Paul Hirsch on the show 3 times. He's one of our favorites. He is almost a co-host at this point, and we need to get him back someday because he's just so fun to have on the show. We had so many great artists who've worked on these movies. I mean, we had Michael Kaplan, who's the costume designer for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and Kaplan is like a just absolute legend. He's Blade Runner, Seven, Fight Club. I mean, just all these amazing movies. Lauren Balfe, composer of Fallout and the upcoming MI7 and MI8. Michael Giacchino, composer of Mission Impossible 3 and Ghost Protocol. Kevin Yeager's a makeup effect legend. I mean, I could go on. Dan Mindell, cinematographer of MI3. He shot Tony Scott movies.
You've been going on a long time, Charles. But what I'm getting is that people who, if you're just coming here for Brian De Palma, sign up, please. It's great. And maybe you'll want to sign up for a Patreon after that.
Yes.
I'm praying for that.
I mean, it's kind of insane going through that list. I'm just like, it's hard to even fathom that we've spoken to all these amazing artists. David Koepp is like one of our favorites. That's an amazing one. I feel bad that we haven't. I want to list everybody we talked to because we've talked to so many great people. And of course, we had our Light the Wick miniseries as well, where we talked to a lot of the makers of the John Wick movies, including director Chad Stahelski. And upcoming, we got David Leitch and Dan Laustsen, who's the cinematographer of 2 and 3.
Wow.
So anyway, we've had so many great episodes. Please check them out. Please subscribe. There's just so much that we've done for this show that I think you'd appreciate. We need to give a special thank you to the publishers of the book who set up this interview.
Yes. Hard Case Crimes is the imprint, and Titan Books is the kind of bigger company. They were very patient with us. We've been trying to get this interview since last summer. And we should mention that Susan Lehman is also on this episode.
Of course.
And she is the co-author of Are Snakes Necessary, now in paperback. And she is Brian's partner in life and creatively right now. So she has amazing insight both into the creation of this book and into his whole deal. So you get that angle as well. Yeah, what else, Charles, before we...
Yeah, and you should absolutely get this book if you are a fan of Brian De Palma.
Yes.
It's like another Brian De Palma movie, and it's a little... We talk about it a little bit in this interview today, but like it's a De Palma movie, but also with a little bit of a twist. Like it feels a little different than what his normal movies are, but also totally a De Palma movie, which is awesome.
Right.
And yeah, check it out. We got a little bit into spoilers, but... in the interview, Susan asked us to cut it out, so there are no spoilers in this. You don't have to worry about that. But get the book because it's awesome. And Drew, you should do your favorite part of the show.
Well, we've got some sponsors as well that make this podcast run. So I gotta give a shout out to Jeremy Dillon and his great podcast, My Favorite Album, where he talks to different musicians, songwriters, actors, and filmmakers about the music they love and how it's affected them in their work. This episode is also brought to you by John B. And if you want to be a part of my shout outs, please go to our Patreon, sign up for the highest level, or just get in touch with us and we can work something out, I'm sure. So what else, Charles? Should we just jump into this thing or what?
I think, I think we should just hand it over to Kevin Blumenfeld's ripoff of the plot theme so that we can just get into this interview.
All right, we'll be back. Charles had a great question about the title of the book he wanted to ask.
Yeah, I did. So, Are Snakes Necessary? Is that a reference to the Preston Sturges movie, The Lady Eve? Because he's, Henry Fonda's reading the book. And I'd love to hear what the reasoning behind that was.
It's a good title.
I mean, yeah, the title works really well for this story. Are you a fan? Are you a big fan of that movie? Or was it just literally you just saw that title and liked it and thought it fit?
I've seen all those Preston Sturges movies. And that's like the first shot. He's reading this book on a deck chair on a yacht.
The title made me laugh. And I went, great, let's call the book that.
Well, do we have another title ever?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, I was going to ask if this was ever, conceived as a movie, but it sounds like it was always a book.
Well, you write a lot of scripts that never get done. So you got a lot of ideas that are sitting on a shelf somewhere or in a computer. And you say, well, this movie never got made, but maybe we can use this idea in a book. And that's sort of how it evolved.
Okay. And what was the collaborative process like?
A lot of fun.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would basically write some stuff and send it off to Susan, and she would rewrite it and send it back to me.
Brian, as you can imagine, has a very visual imagination and a great eye for structure. And so he put down the tent poles, and then we'd send it back and forth. And we kind of played a game, which was send it back and forth and see if you can amuse the other person more than you were amused.
Did you have an ending from the start?
No, we were a couple of pages short. So,
what do you mean a couple of pages short?
As I recall, we wrote this some time ago.
And
I think there's a whole section that we decided to add on after we'd sort of mapped everything out.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Was it the whole Paris section or something? Or do you mean, because it's very much an ensemble, or was it like one of the characters that you were following?
Well, we had some broad ideas.
It's this kind of attention to detail that makes Brian the master.
We had the political story, and then when we got the DiCarlo character involved, then we got into her doing the column.
But I think the final revenge, I think we took the revenge up a notch there at the end.
Okay. What was the biggest challenge of writing together? Or I guess writing a novel, your first novel in general?
Well, as you can imagine, we had a lot of time together, and it sort of fills out the day. Because I sort of wake up very early in the morning, have all kinds of ideas, and I sort of go to the computer and write them down, and then I sort of confer with Susan. And sometimes I'm either developing a screenplay, but then I had all these other ideas from the other screenplays, and it's a kind of unique collaboration because Susan kind of fits into the things I don't have. I'm, a visual storyteller and blah, 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 blah. And she's able to, give the characters meat on the bone. In movies, you just say he, she, the reporter, you're very sketching things in because when the actors come in, they give the body to the character. But Susan did a lot of this filling in the characters and their backstories.
Well, the book came out a year ago. We're nearing the paperback release. Is there going to be a follow-up? Are there going to be more of these books?
Many, many more.
Yes, we, in our confinement, came up with another idea for a book, and we've been working on that for quite a while. So
it's finished.
Yes, it's finished.
That's great.
When our public calls out to us, we will release it.
Well, we'd love to see that for sure. I hope that happens.
Yeah, we're calling out for it.
I'm interested to know the book it feels so much like a Brian De Palma movie, but also has more. It feels like a lot of your movies are so laser focused in the narrative of a singular character or just a couple characters. This is much more of an ensemble. It almost it's like a Brian De Palma movie by way of like Robert Altman almost, with all these different characters. Was that always
to be the Robert Altman character in this portrayal?
Was that always the idea, or did it start? I know a lot of your movies, and it's like sequences are where you start from and then build around. Was it more like that, or how did the whole thing begin for you?
What happens when you can't answer these questions?
You ask me.
Okay.
So Brian had a number of ideas, and the book is built around set pieces that are easily recognizable as trademark De Palma moments. The Eiffel Tower is one, and there are others. And so I think Brian plots things. He's a really good plotter. Like, he knows exactly how things are going to be structured and how different scenes are going to speak to other ones. So I think we started with his basic idea, structural idea, and then we played around with it a lot. Is that accurate?
You have to explain played around.
Well, we made up new characters, and we complicated their stories, and we,
Fleshed them out.
Twisted their pathways to one another.
And had many laughs doing it.
Susan, would you agree with the laughs part?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, writing with somebody takes all the, especially if somebody's Brian, takes all the loneliness of writing alone, removes that, and replaces it with, a sense of mischief and play.
Right.
I really recommend it.
You have the right partner.
Were any of these set pieces left over from projects that you couldn't either fit into projects that were already completed or, from abandoned projects as well?
Boy, that's hard to answer. I'm trying to think back.
Brian operates with a ragtag bag of tricks and ideas. I mean, he's always working. He has a million ideas. There's a treasure trove of unproduced scripts, and some are filled with good ideas, and some probably are filled with less good ideas.
They're all full with great ideas.
Did you send any early drafts or run any of these ideas by your buddy and neighbor David Koepp?
No, not really. I think we sent them. Because he read the book and gave us a quote. Yes, well, only when we were finished.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Brian is very big on, here's a trade secret, he's very big on don't show your work to anybody until it's finished.
Oh, really? But you famously have chimed in on other people's work in progresses. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you really heckled Lucas on using the Force in that early Star Wars screening.
Will we never live down this meeting over the first screening of Star Wars? When I talk to everybody that was involved in that meeting, everyone has a different version of what happened.
Well, give your version.
Yeah.
But my version is pretty close. I was just watching Stephen's the biography they did of Stephen, and he related how he saw it. Everybody, they always portray me as the guy that says the worst thing that drives everybody crazy. But if you're going to show me something, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. Why am I there unless I'm going to give an honest appraisal of what I've seen? And in this case, the fact that Stephen says that only he saw the possibilities of Star Wars, that's not really true. We all saw it as a terrific thing that George had done. And we were well aware of where the special effects weren't there and how they had cut in all these planes from other movies to be things that they were supposed to be, the ships and stuff like that. But I did make a joke about the Force. That's true.
Tell us what your opinion of the Force was.
I just thought the idea of the Force is like, the Force, I would say, but I kept repeating it, like, it doesn't seem like a great name for this kind of spiritual guidance, the Force. So needless to say, I had a lot to say about the Force, which obviously I was terribly wrong about. But the other thing was that no one knew what was, the movie starts in chapter 3. We're in a world nobody's ever knows anything about. He's got all these funny names for people. And I said, George, you've got to set this up somehow like those crawls in the Flash Gordon movies where but George had that idea, but it was all gobbledygook, basically. So I and Jay Cox went over the crawl and basically rewrote it.
Right.
So it made some sense. And that was our contribution. But I mean, I said some things very direct to my director friends about their movies that went on to be extremely successful. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. They did the same for my movies. I mean, when George saw Mission Impossible, he said, there's no setup to this thing. You've got to set this thing up. You got to you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you're going to do that. You got to have that scene where they're all sitting around the table and everybody gets their instructions about what's going to happen. In the beginning, we had this very strange scene. I know it's hard for me to remember now, but with Voight and somehow the jealous thing with the wife and Tom. And then we got into the first mission. And when George showed the movie, it's the first thing he said, what are these people doing? This is Mission Impossible. It's a group of guys going to do something. So you've got to get them all around a table and tell the audience what they're supposed to do. And that's what we did. We went back and reshot it. So that was that example of, us helping each other.
Wow.
And so is that scene with John Voight at the head of the table and Kristen Scott Thomas is off to the side, was she not able to come back for scheduling? Because it kind of seems like she was sort of isolated in a corner.
Correct. You're astute. Student of cinema. That, in fact, Kristen could not come. So I had to shoot her over to the side and we doubled her in the master shot with her back to the window.
Wow.
I don't know if I can take credit. I think someone else pointed that out before me, but
Go ahead, take credit.
I don't know if you know this, Brian, but we've done like over 150 episodes on the Mission Impossible franchise and talked to many of your collaborators on the first movie. And they told us everything. No, I'm kidding. So we were wondering, that's the 25th anniversary now. And you had an interesting sort of history with writers on this one too, which is why I'm glad Susan's here to hear about your relationship with other writers. But
No, I've heard this before.
what was that? I mean, did you use anything from that original Cats and Yuck draft of the movie, or was that just...
Which draft are you talking about?
Supposedly there was a draft that Willard and Gloria Katz did.
Correct.
And did you end up using anything from that?
What happened was Sidney Pollack worked with them originally. He worked on a year on a draft. It was all set in the Midwest. There was a storm. I don't even remember what it was. But Tom was unhappy with it. And when the head of CAA said to me, would you be interested in doing Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise? And I said, you bet. And they sent me off because Sidney wanted to do Sabrina. He wanted to get out of the Mission Impossible situation because it wasn't going well. So Sidney went on to Sabrina and they plugged me into Mission Impossible. So I proceeded to work with the Hikes, who I knew way back from, working with, George many years ago. And we worked on a version still all set in the United States. I think and I don't even quite remember what the mission was, but it had something to do with a storm. And I knew Tom was not going to like this, but I was forced to go through another draft of this thing where everybody was looking around for new writers to start all over again. And then they had, Paramount had a commitment to Zalian, and Zalian and I went off to his office. We smoked a lot of cigarettes. I think I ate a lot of popcorn. And we worked for a couple of weeks, and we worked out a 10-page treatment of what ultimately became the basis for Mission Impossible. But then Zalian had other things he wanted to do, so he bailed out. And then I ran into David, who was about to do a remake of something. And I said, don't do that. Come over, let's do Mission Impossible. So he said, great. So I handed David this 10-page treatment, and he and I worked out the initial script for Mission Impossible.
Okay.
That's act number one. Act number two is I'm trying to convince John, all Paramount wanted to do was make Mission Impossible. To get Tom Cruise into Mission Impossible is all they cared about. What the script was, who cares, as long as Tom is in Mission Impossible. And Tom was always having problems with the characters or something. And I said, Tom, you got to go in and tell Sherry that you're going to make this movie, or, we're going nowhere. So ultimately, Tom said, okay, we're going to make this script. And everybody said, good, we have a go picture. We're going to London. We're starting to build all the sets. But I got a call the next day, and it was from Paula Wagner. And she said, the good news is we're all go. The bad news is you have to fire David Koepp. I said, what? Because Tom wants to bring on Bob Town. Fire David Koepp? David's never been fired in his life. He's an old friend of mine. And I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no, that's what Tom wants to do. So I had to call up Dave. I said, Dave, the good news is it's a go. The bad news is you're fired.
Oh.
So what I did was keep David in the loop, let him know what we were doing when we were starting to go into production. And Town was up in the hotel for 6 weeks, writing God knows what. Tom and I used to come in from rehearsals and act out these scenes in front of him. And he would work some more and smoke a few more cigars. And
Are there any tapes of that?
I don't
Of you
think
and Tom
so.
acting out the scenes?
Finally, when he had to submit a script, the new script, Paula was appalled. I mean, it just didn't work at all. So I said, you got to bring David Koepp back on, and we have to take some of the good stuff some of the good scenes that Town done. And so what Town did, he rewrote the whole script. That's not what needed to be done. The characters had to be fleshed out a little bit, and there have to be some clever lines. That's what he did. And then I brought David back on. I made them pay him a lot of money. And for 2 weeks, he took what Towns had done and integrated it into his script. And that became the script we shot with, of course, until the famous story about pulling off masks in the boxcar, which we had a big fight over that. And I said, I got this big helicopter chase in the tunnel with him on the train, the void on the helicopter. And then Town looks at me and says, oh, one of those, helicopters going into a tunnel sequences. And I said, oh, okay, maybe you're right. Let's do pulling off masks in the boxcar. That's how we'll wrap it up. Great. And I left it at that and walked out of the room. And Tom came around and thought that maybe the helicopter thing in the end would be better than the pulling the masks off in the boxcar as a finale.
So how much of the Town stuff ultimately made it in, would you say? Not much?
There were some good lines. There's some good Town lines in there, but basically it's David's script.
Okay.
And I was very disappointed with Town, with what, he has such a great reputation. I was very disappointed in what he did. And then look what he did to the next Mission Impossible. It's a mess.
It's true.
That is no good.
He was riffing on Hitchcock, though. I mean, did you have any sympathy in that?
What you mean in the one he did after mine?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
it was
of
like
notorious.
it was basically just Notorious.
Yeah, I know. I heard that idea so many times. Let's do Notorious. Blah, blah, blah. And that's what he did. And it was not good.
Wait, when you say you heard that idea so many times, do you mean Tom Cruise was saying to you, let's do Notorious?
No, this was an idea the town had about doing it kind of the Notorious element.
Oh, okay.
We all love Notorious, but it didn't work for Mission Impossible, as you probably observed.
Yeah.
You know, the sequence in the diner with John Voight when he's revealed to be alive, and Tom Cruise is seeing the truth while John Voight lies. You know, I think Paul Hirsch had some hilarious comments about how critics were dumbed down from Twister coming out a couple weeks before he told us about that. But I'm wondering where that sequence is so brilliant, and I just love it so much. I'm wondering when did that come about? Was that with Kep, or was that, you know, when in the process?
Now you're getting into an area that I don't quite remember. I remember the way I shot it, and the idea of, I think it must have come from me and David, because I had this idea that Voight should be saying one thing and Tom should be thinking what the truth was. And then, you know, I laid out the sequence like that. But I think that's something we had right in the beginning of his script. I guess you could check in the versions David has on his website.
Yes.
Did the initial script and then how it changed in the final.
I think those
version.
are all included in the De Palma archive, by the way.
No, they're in the David Kep archives.
In one of his earlier scripts, there was a great set piece with a military wedding where, you know, Ethan is tricking Kittredge by showing up, and he does a quick change of his outfit to like fit in with this whole military wedding that comes out of the church. Do you recall that?
No. We had a great sequence where they got one of the members. I think it was
Ving Rhames?
Was it Bing? I think it was Bing, where he's in prison and they break him out in prison. We had a great sequence with breaking him out of prison, in which they give him a shot so he looks like he's dead, and then they bring him up to the roof and they're going to incinerate him, and then the helicopter arrives and saves Ving, you know, from being incinerated, and he becomes. Otherwise, we had the Seven Samurai recruiting the group.
Right.
We kind of lost all that. We just stuck them all in the train and they were all there. But we had sequences for each one where they were recruited.
But that was never filmed, was it?
No.
Right.
Though I laid out that sequence of the escape from prison. We were even starting to build a set for that before we said, oh, this is too much, it's too expensive. You know, we got to cut this down.
Wow. But you seem to have had a relatively good time on this movie, all things considered, correct?
A good time?
Maybe hindsight is making it. Yeah, I've heard you talk very warmly about the movie recently. I don't know if maybe time has colored your perception of it, but
a good time.
You made a comment recently about how Carlito's Way and Mission Impossible might be. I forget the exact phrasing that you said, but it was something about you being at the top of your game. You had the biggest, you know, sandbox to play in, and
I had all the great things that you have when you make a big studio movie. You know, all the great technicians, a lot of money, you know, big stars. Yeah. You know, you can make something extraordinary. But it was like after it was over, I said, get me out of here. Talk about stress in order to get the thing done.
Charles, what are the questions you wished you had asked Brian De Palma? What is haunting you?
Yes, I have. I've texted you like on a daily basis, bringing up all this. Oh man, I can't believe I didn't ask him this. Oh, I can't believe I didn't ask him. I actually have a list of questions that I've started to create for if there's ever a chance that we talk to him again.
Dear Lord,
because I'm a crazy person,
folks. If I get a hold of that I will burn it. And the world will not be subjected to this. But
Yeah.
I think we did a great job. We had an hour, which was already very generous amount of time. So I think we did well, Charles.
Yes, and please, you'll have to come back next week because there's more. Part 2, we go even further into Mission Impossible and other things. And I mean, there's stuff to talk about from this week. I mean, the George Lucas revelation was a big deal.
Yeah, that was one of the things that stuck with me, especially because we get into the whole crawl thing.
Yes.
And then for him to flip it and say, "Oh, but he gave me just as good advice on this movie," was amazing.
Yeah, and it sheds light on that sequence where they're all sitting around talking about the mission, the idea that George Lucas said that they should do. But that Kristen Scott Thomas is kind of off on her own, and we got confirmation from De Palma that it was done as a reshoot, and she couldn't be there, and that's why it was shot that way.
Cruise's hair looks a little different in that scene, so I've always wondered.
And I actually never heard that was a reshoot. I never, like, Paul Hirsch never said it. We'd never heard that anywhere else, so it was really cool to hear that, and that George Lucas has given notes on Mission Impossible. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great.
Another big revelation was the early draft, the Hook and Katz draft that was set in the Midwest with a storm or something.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I wonder if they had gotten wind of Twister and were trying to compete with it in some way.
But that's crazy.
Well, stranger things have happened, Charles.
I mean, maybe is it possible that there was a storm? Maybe they were doing some kind of mousetrap or tricking someone into thinking that there was a storm. Is that possible?
I don't know. We need to get in touch. I think they're both still alive, right?
I think only Willard is actually still with us. So maybe we can get Willard on the show and ask him about it. I mean, that would be
I would love that.
Pretty awesome. We'd love to track him down. I mean, what did they write? They wrote Temple of Doom and American Graffiti.
Yep. I think they've also helped on a couple other things, sort of, without credit. So they're titans of that era.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's pretty fascinating to hear about, and about Sidney Pollack exiting the project to go make the Sabrina remake, which is a choice. It just seems like kind of a fool's errand to me. I actually have never seen the Sabrina remake, and maybe I should.
Oh, we should watch it.
I shouldn't be talking shit.
Yeah, we should watch it for the Patreon, Charles, and you can give us your thoughts.
There we go.
The
That's the way to do it. It was also fun to hear about Robert Towne pushing to do Notorious. That's funny because obviously he ended up doing it for MI2, which we talked about. But it's funny to hear that Towne was pushing De Palma to be like, let's do Notorious. Let's do Notorious.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty fraught production. I mean, all of these are, but this one, a lot of competing agendas on this, and it was fascinating to get to untangle that a little bit and to hear it all from De Palma too is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then the other thing that was cool to hear about too was the breaking out of prison sequence, which we've talked about before because it was in the Ron Moore archive,
right?
For which it was in our Oliver Stone's MI2 episode, which if you have not listened to, you should absolutely go back and check out. But in that episode, Ron Moore was one of the early screenwriters on that movie, and he took over after Oliver Stone left the project, and he was writing the early drafts for John Woo. And in there, he had the Oliver Stone draft that was written by not Stone, but it was written by, I can't remember who the writer was now. But anyway, they also had a piece of the Kep draft that had the prison breakout sequence. And because I think they were considering trying to, now that the prison breakout sequence where they broke Luther out, it was no longer going to be in Mission 1, so I think maybe Cruise was thinking, why don't we use this in Mission 2? And so we have that, and we break it down and talk about those script pages in that episode. You should check it out.
Yeah, I believe at least one of those versions of the script is also on David Kep's website. So
yeah, it's possible. That's true. It's possible that is on. So you should check out David Kep's website, which is really great.
Yeah.
And check out our interview with David Kep because we talked to him about a lot of great stuff. I think it was David Marconi was the writer for Oliver Stone.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, it was so many fascinating things. So cool. And please come back for part 2. Obviously, this is amazing for us to have this conversation with Brian De Palma. It's really surreal. And you should absolutely check it out. And please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/LightTheFuse. There are mission-related episodes. There are things where we talk about just other movies that we love. And we did commentaries for all 6 Mission Impossible movies. We're going to do commentaries for all the John Wick movies. We did commentary for my movie, Night Owls. We did, I interviewed you about your book that you did. You did the Art of Onward book. So, there's so many various fun episodes that you could check out there. So please sign up. It really at all makes the show possible. And we can't thank our Patreon followers enough for that. Also, maybe buy a shirt or a mask or a tote bag or a computer case or a phone case or anything else from our TeePublic store. That is linked from our website at lightthefusepodcast.com. There's a merch section there, which can bring you to our TeePublic store. And then also on our website, you can check out our episode guide, and you can see all of the show notes for every episode that we have. It's a great visual companion to all of our episodes. And follow us on social media at LightTheFusePod on Twitter and Instagram. And I've got a couple of shout-outs I've got to give.
Give them, Charles. Give them.
I want to give a special thanks to Jacob from Holland. Jacob is a rock star. He's been with us for a long time. We love him so much. And I also want to thank our mixer and editor, Luke Burson, and our production assistant, Abby Smith, and Kevin Blumenfeld for his music, Legally Dissimilar and otherwise. And also want to say thank you to you, Drew. This has been quite a ride, and this is amazing.
This is a good way to kind of cap off our first 3 years of this show.
Yeah.
In a big way, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I can't wait for everybody to come back because I think episode 2 might be even better. That's when he really gets unfiltered, let's say.
Yeah, we talk about the Untouchables.
Yes.
And just, other projects he's got coming up.
Yeah, unmade projects, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely come back for that. And so we'll be back then.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.